Thanks, Alex, and thanks to the Sheep CRC for the opportunity to be able to describe some of the achievements from Program 1, which is this enhanced sheep wellbeing and productivity. There's a lot of people that have contributed to this program over the last phase of the Sheep CRC, and unfortunately Alex's threats means that I don't have the time to be able to go through those. What I'm going to do today is give you a brief refresher about the main activity in Program 1 and then talk about the new features. So the main activity has been ASKBILL. It's a web-based application. Many of you, I hope, all of you have heard of it. Many of you would have seen me or others present about the features of it, the validation of it that we've been conducting over the last 18 months. I'm not going to be talking about that because, again, the time doesn't permit that, but I'm going to be talking about some of the new features to be able to give the concept in terms of how we're progressing. So the web-based application ASKBILL, this is a schema that underlines that we take farm data, whether that's put in by yourselves in terms of pasture or live weight or comes in ultimately from satellite or from walkover wires. We add that with climate data that Johan Borshoff is going to talk about on a 5-kilometre grid across the entire land continent. We add that with genetic data because we know animal growth curves aren't the same. They're affected by their genetic merit for growth. And we pass that to a range of models that sit on a platform that provide forecasts because sheep management is about anticipating the future. And so how do we set targets and how do we track progress towards those targets? And we provide what-if scenarios. So, for example, how much feed do I need to provide to animals in order to hit targets? And of course, all of that gets reflected in management actions. So the ASKBILL forecasts cover those 4 main areas, from pastures to live weight, from the risk of worm and sheep blowfly and the risk from extreme cold and heat. And for each of them there are what-ifs, so these useful situations which provide the answer in terms of how many DSEs, how much feed do I need to provide. Now, the features that we've spent a lot of time on, particularly Mary Goodacre when she was with the Sheep CRC, that we knew we had to deliver on by talking with hundreds of users were these 4 points here. One is that we take information today and in a way that nobody else does, that we're aware of anywhere else in the world. We provide forecasts of the future, some of them out to 180 days for those range of traits, some of them for shorter lead times, some of them for longer lead times. And we know that's important, and particularly in the sheep industry, because the time we should be taking action, we can't see those early signs. And that's often the case for all sorts of things, particularly for parasite infection, but we also know in terms of managing feed. The third point that we've been told very clearly is that we need to make something that people do already easier. So it needs to be better and easier. So for those that take pasture growth rates and then muck about with DSE calculations to do a feed budget, we do all of that. We do all of that in an attempt to make this as easy as possible. And we also work on the notion you put the data in once. But the key point is the one down the bottom, that this is about helping people, helping you make better decisions. Not the perfect decision. That's an unrealistic expectation, and expectations are a really important concept in terms of decision support. But it's about, rather than the computer and the person going head to head, and we know if that was chess, the computer would win all the time, but this isn't chess. This is the computer and the person helping to make better decisions. So the 4 new features I want to talk about are we now display the forecast rainfall. Don't particularly have good news there at the moment. We link that to soil moisture. We calculate a mob distribution, and I'll explain what that means. So we provide a mob average, but also a distribution and how that helps us set up that supply chain. So let's talk about the rainfall forecast. So these are the new features in ASKBILL, and at morning tea there will be a session on ASKBILL in the breakout room for those that are interested. So what we've got here on the y-axis or vertical axis is cumulative rainfall from the 1st of January to the middle of the year. There's today, whatever that is, the 20th of March or something. We've got the past, we've got the forecast 90 days. We actually pick up 180 days from our friends at the Bureau. These are in the XSS forecasts that aren't commercial or operationalised as yet, but we're providing them through ASKBILL. We provide the last 30 years, and this is for Armidale in northern New South Wales, and we've got the current year here, and the current year is showing both where we're up to today, and then this is the 90-day forecast and providing in terms of the millimetres. So we've got a 75% chance of getting at least 140 millimetres from the 1st of June, and if we're sitting at 70 millimetres today, that's an extra 70 millimetres and a 25% chance of getting above the other. And we provide the facility to be able to compare against the different years. So if I look at just last year, which was tough enough, then what we see is this year's expanding the whole range in terms of what our data set contains. Rainfall's interesting, but on its own it doesn't do a lot. It grows pasture, and we need to pick that up in terms of the models, and it drives soil moisture. So we now provide soil moisture. This was always in the model, but we show this to our users. So we take the rainfall. This is exactly the same as what I showed you before, showing the rainfall events, and it's translating into soil moisture here from the surface down to 60 centimetres. We can go deeper into bands. And the bad news is the orange and reds are wilting point, and the green and blue are field capacity, so the ideal level for plant growth. So here we are today, and then this is the forecast. Again, this is for the Armidale smart farms going forward. And this is affected by pasture growth as well, because of course the more active our pastures, the quicker they drive the profile. So the second point was in terms of taking a mob average and also providing a distribution. So for those that have an ASKBILL account, the pasture's going along in the background. It's being updated each day from the climate data coming in, and that animals are being grown on that pasture. And here we've got terminal merino lambs that are part of the resource flock, MLA funded national resource flock. Again at Armidale Smart Farm, so this is real data. Live weight on the y-axis, this is time, the past and the forecast 180 days, showing live weight, carcass weight and fleece weight. And the red showing the target that we have and the prediction at the moment that unless we do something different, we're not going to be hitting that target. Again, this is the forecast growth with the probabilistic range around it. Now, because we can access something like 500,000 live weight records from the information nucleus flock, we can take that group average, which on its own is useful, and start to provide a distribution. We heard yesterday that animals aren't all the same within a mob, and remember, this is already customised for the different genetics of the animals that are loaded up into ASKBILL, and we start to provide that distribution in terms of the range of live weights for the animals. Now, on the 19th of March, it was predicted that 5 animals were falling within a band of 45 to 65 kilos. So this is a band Pete McGilchrist would like the lambs coming off so that when they go through the slaughter, we can pick up the eating quality data on it. Now, if I travel along that forecast curve, we're now out to the 10th of May. So we're making an almost 2-month projection here. There's going to be 170 animals as both the mean and the distribution. Now, that doesn't tell you which tag number it is, but you're not drafting on tag number, you're drafting on weight, and that's the metric that we're providing in terms of these distributions that are available. Now, just think about this. Think about that we're all ASKBILL users. You know, you've got the Hogan's files in there, the Boshoff, the Brooks, the Wards. We've got a family of ASKBILL accounts, and that's building a community. And you think about those animals that were identified on the Uni Smart Farm, 10th of May, 170 animals. Well, we've got different number of animals coming from each of those ASKBILL account users. Well, this is a feature that's coming. If you choose to enable, and I'll stress that, if you choose to enable the sharing of your data, then what we can do is start to turn that community of inventory into a graph that looks like this, talking now about there might be 11,000 lambs in a certain specification on that date. And of course, we start to provide the forecast. So we, for the first time really, started to link on-farm recording with inventory management to connect the supply chain. So at the same time with AMPC support, we've built the equivalent of ASKBILL, which is from the producer point of view, Mob Select from the processor point of view, where processors who are able to access data that producers, remember it's that producer having to tick the box if you want to do that or not, being able to then start to look within that inventory months ahead of time, and we can start to set up those signals and communication. So what we've done with ASKBILL, we started off in terms of farm data, remember that? We pair that with climate and genetic data. We feed it to a range of models that provides these forecasts and what-ifs, and we've now got inventory management. So not only on-farm management action, we get the supply chain actions as well. And the last point I want to leave you with, when you're looking at ASKBILL and using that account, it's really about providing forecasts to help you make better decisions. Thank you.